subscribe, Cody, to the view of positional value? You know, how important do you think that is in terms of the team's inputs and analytics to try and kind of make a pick here?
So I do to an extent. I don't think it's as big as everyone seems to make it out to be, especially in these days with the game changing and everything like that. For me, where positional value really comes in is if I have the same grade or they have the same grade on two players. Like, say they have the same grade on Hamilton as they do Kayvon Thibodeau. But, that's where you lean into the positional value because they're similar grades, but now I have this guy who plays a more valuable position. I'm gonna take him, right? But if I have Hamilton and let's just say for example a 94, and I have Thibodeau as a 89 grade, then I'm gonna take the best player available. So it's to an extent the real position I'm only ever gonna argue positional value on is a running back, just because I don't think they're that valuable at all anymore. They are, but it's just like it's gone down a lot in the past decade or so. So I do to an extent, but I don't think it's again as much as everyone else makes it out to be.
Yeah, and John, I've kind of this year in terms of I'll talk you through some of this sort of basic analytics kind of input matrix that I've kind of put together to try and help decipher between these picks because there's not much in it. But I've kind of ranked it as QB and edge being the top tier, just the tier slightly below that, cornerback, offensive tackle, then both interior positions at tier 3, wide receiver and safety, and then the sort of fourth tier is linebacker, tight end, and running back. Do you kind of see that as a big input the Texans have? I've done it kind of a small percentage of the overall grade, but how do you see it?
I honestly might make an argument that wide receiver has overtaken those interior positions in today's league. It feels like the rule changes are pushing the game outwards, and that you really do have to win on the inside. I mean, on the outside, we're watching most of the top teams in today. They're winning with these really aggressive vertical passing attacks, and the rules are designed where you can win that way. But other than that, I totally agree with that's probably how the tiers would be. And to echo Cody's point, it's quarterback and then running backs at the bottom. But everything with that, I think the Texans will ultimately trust their board because they're not in a position to miss on a guy because they wanted to force a fit. I think they're trying to find good football players and build organically because let's be honest, I don't think Cal McNair's in a rush to win. He clearly loves what Caserio is doing, and I think Caserio just got to hire his second head coach in 2 years, so they're going to do it the way they see fit.
Yeah, and obviously you saw the Garrett Wilson rumours today, and a number of sources. You don't know if that's kind of been dropped out for no reason, or it's just been put as a smokescreen to try and throw people off, which would seem odd because there seems no benefit in that. But it felt very intentional, very specific that it was out there. So yeah, I mean, for me, I think wide receiver at 3 and even 13 perhaps is a little too high. John, what do you think?
Yeah, I personally would not be taking a wide receiver that high at this point in the rebuild. Um, Wilson's good. I mean, Wilson's a great football player. I just think that with how this draft looks, there are some guys at other spots. Cody and I talk a lot about Jordan Davis. I think we had a whole thread with you one day talking about him. I think there could be guys like Jermaine Johnson or Kyle Hamilton there. Maybe the only guy I would understand at 13 is Jamison Williams because I really do think he has that game breaking potential that lets you have maybe 4 or 5 play scoring drives where just the offense gets something cheap, and you need points like that to win today. But I don't expect them to pick a wide receiver, and I'd be pretty shocked if they did, honestly, this early on, especially with the depth of this class.
Yeah, and Corey, I think that's a good point there. Though I know we talked about Jordan Davis, and I've kind of when I've put these rankings together, he's kind of got pushed down a little, and I think that does come down to positional value. But certainly, like I've graded these guys putting together the board. It's been so many countless hours, but in the 5 tiers, we've kind of got blue chip day one, tier 2 is like potential starters, tier 3 being contributors, tier 4 being spot fillers, and tier 5 being developmental shot in the dark type guys. And I've kind of broke the 50-point grading scale into a number of ways. So positional value being 1, 5 out of the 50. Team position need, scheme fit, traits, health and culture, which I think we see probably roughly 40% of it. I saw Bill Polian quoted the 40%, 60% is only teams' access to medical records and the interview process, all the kind of information they get funneled through scouts. And then what we can see is the tape And then I think what's the biggest kind of unknown and why everybody gets this wrong is the upside projections into the pros. Cody, have you had a kind of number of examples where you've watched guys like you were talking about Jordan Davis, and then you got and watched a couple other games, and it completely changes your perception because I think not everybody's got enough time to watch every game, and that's why teams get it wrong because there's always information out there that not everybody can pick up. It's impossible. So, have you changed your opinion on any prospects throughout this?
So I guess the biggest one for me would be Sauce. He's actually or Gardner. He's actually a guy I kind of liked at first, and then I really kind of dove into what film I could get to actually watch, and it just was kind of unimpressive to me. And went back and tried to watch it again a couple of times just because so many people are so high on him, and it never changed for me. But obviously, we all probably see different things when we're watching the same player on tape. But everyone sees different things. It's kind of hard for everyone to get the same exact opinion on a guy, but I think it does happen a lot. Other than Sauce, though, I didn't really see a guy that I went back and watched and had a change of opinion on, at least yet. But we'll see how that goes after the draft.
Yeah, and John, I think so. I've kind of nailed it down to these four players in terms of where we think or what I think the value is based on the grade, and I'll let you guys pick up on any points if you want in terms of how I've kind of graded them. But I think Aiden Hutchinson for me, I don't buy necessarily all the narrative that he's a safe pick or he's low upside. I think there's definitely probably less upside because the ceiling is lower because the floor certainly crept up further than anybody else. And if he is there, I think he's a no-brainer because we wouldn't be able to sign a guy like that on the open market. The way we're positioned and the way we're kind of viewed around the league, I think that it would be an easy decision to run the card. And so I've kind of split it between the four guys. I think Ian Hutchinson being a joint top with Kyle Hamilton, Evan Neal, and Ike Ekwonu. If it was, would you, just to go back on a point, John, would you rank Sauce in there with the potential picks for three?
Yeah, I would. I like Sauce more than Cody. I think Sauce has everything I probably want to see in a corner. I wish he was a better tackler, but he's a really long guy. He's a willing enough tackler from what I see on film, and I think he's really technical and the kind of corner that could make an immediate impact in our scheme. It's a weaker I mean, truthfully, if I was going to pick a defensive player, like especially a defensive back, I'd probably just take Kyle Hamilton because I think he's just a better player than Sauce. But I think the emerging value of especially a number one corner, and I think in coverage, Sauce is going to give you that. I would put him in consideration too. He's also, I love how he comes off in interviews and just kind of energy he bring to a defense. I think there's something different about a guy who is comfortable calling himself Sauce as a corner. That's some swagger, that's some attitude that can really help change the identity of a defense. So for me, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we were picking fifth, sixth, seventh, around that area, I think that I'd probably feel a little bit more comfortable. I kind of keep going back to the core principles of getting max value and trying to understand where we get that from. And I think the one thing with Kyle Hamilton here, Cody, is if you change his positional value, it's ranked 3 out of 5 for being a safety, being in that third tier. If you change that even one, then he's the clear pick. If you were to mark him as a slot corner, for example, which he could, potentially fill that role, I think. And I keep going back to the fact that it will be either Neil or Aquanu, depending who goes in the top two. Cody, have you got a feel for kind of where you think they'll go right now? Assuming Aiden Hutchinson is off the board, where do you think Detroit go, and then what does that leave us with?
So, man, it's hard to say for sure. I don't think really anybody, national media wise, or anyone related to the Texans media, has any idea what the Texans are doing. I know John and I have talked about this a few times. Actually, it's just Nick Caserio has kept everything so close to the vest that it's really hard to tell what he's going to do. And obviously, it's kind of hard to tell what the Lions are going to do because there's no clear cut guy outside of like Aiden Hutchinson he's not even clear cut anymore. So I don't have a feel really on what they'll do. That's why I'm not necessarily banking on one guy at any one pick. I have about 5 guys at pick 3 I like, about 8 guys at pick 13 I like. So
Yeah.
to say the least, I don't have a feel really.
Make a prediction, Cody. Come on.
Yeah. All right. So what we'll do, guys, is we'll say just run a quick sim there. So we'll say Ian Hutchinson off the board, number 1. Trayvon Walker goes number 2. Who are you picking?
Who am I picking? I'm going Kayvon Thibodeau, but I don't necessarily think that's what they're going to do. But that's who I would pick.
John?
I would also pick Kayvon Thibodeau. I think that'll be the order, what you just said. I think it'll be flipped. I think Trayvon Walker is going to be the number 1 pick. I think he's going to balky this draft. And then Hutchinson feels like a logical fit to stay home in Michigan. I do think you said you think it's gotten down to the tackles. I don't know why. I think it's going to be a defensive player. I think that Caserio is going to give Lovie Smith. There's a lot of incentive to this hire to work out, and I think a large part of that's going to be on how Lovie's defense works. And these guys are pretty similarly graded at the top. I expect them to go with Sauce, Stingley, Kayvon, and with how the Texans draft and operate, it wouldn't surprise me at the end of the day if they took Kyle Hamilton. The way they preach about tape and character mattering, I think they'll take a defensive guy.
Okay, that being said, Cody, would you get on board with Kyle Hamilton?
Oh yeah, he's one of those 5 guys I just mentioned that pick 3 that I'd be fine with. I definitely like Hamilton. I think the narrative surrounding him has been kind of overblown as like he's going to be a box player and stuff like that. I don't agree with that. I'd definitely be behind that pick.
Cool. We'll run the card and then Kyle Hamilton and see where that leaves us on this on this mock sim. Now, assuming we can't trade out of 3, would you trade out? Would you entertain a trade at 13?
I definitely would, depending on if you get the right value, which I don't know what that's going to be, and if that's different in this draft compared to last drafts. I definitely take a trade back at 13.
So John, in this scenario, then we've got an offer on the table here from the Chargers for their 17th pick and a second next year. Green Bay, less value, giving us back 22nd and then 2 seconds this year, but having to give up our early 3rd. Would you take the first trade there with a second overall to second next year to move back 4 spots?
I might take I don't hate that Green Bay trade because you're moving up in the 3rd and then you're gaining a second this year. And I think I just am more familiar with this class. I don't know about the depth of next year. I know all the stars are coming out. But realistically, I think they could get more than a future 2 for that kind of move up from the Chargers, especially I'm kind of projecting the run on receivers to happen sometime between 8 and 20. It's going to start, and I think it's going to be hot and heavy once it is. There are 5 elite receivers in this draft, and there are probably 8 or 9 teams that would like one of them. I think they could get more than that, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if they trade down because right now the value for this team is collecting top 50, top 70 picks in this draft or day 1, day 2 picks next year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, and I take it, and in this scenario, we've had Malik Willis come off the board, which I don't see going to happen, but we've got Aquanu Davis, Gardner at 7, Kayvon Thibodeau 8, Wilson at 9, Johnson at 10, Jets trading up to 9, Jameson Williams at 11, like as you said, John, elite talent, speed burner. I think he's a guy that definitely comes off. And then Derek Stingley at 12, which actually I heard Peter King say that's been their guy right from the word go, and I think that it's a definite kind of consideration for us. So with that being said, who would you, in this scenario, I think there's a clear winner. We've got a guy sitting there on our top 4 guys that Evan Neal's fallen to this point. I suppose if Evan Neal's there at 13, not going to happen, but you'd obviously run the card in. But John, who's your kind of picks for 13?
In this scenario, Jack Easterby is saying a quick prayer, and we're sprinting that card to the podium to take Evan Neal at 13. I expect he'll be a top 6 pick during the real draft. At 13, probably 5 names I come back to. There are 2 run it to the podium guys who I don't expect to be there. Jermaine Johnson from FSU, the edge rusher, and then Kyle Hamilton, who we chose to take at 3. There's rumor that I think Johnson's ultimately going to be a top 10 pick, but no one knows what's going on with Kyle Hamilton. If either of those two guys are there, I don't even think you can entertain trading back. I think you have to take one of them. After that, my third option is trade back, because I think there is value to be found here in helping New Orleans get the tackle that they want, helping Green Bay come up for a wide receiver. The Chargers could be looking to move up too. Or if you really want to get fancy, I bet if Malik Willis is still on the board, which in this scenario he's not, but in real life, I don't think a quarterback's going in the top 12 without a trade. If Pittsburgh will give you a future one to come up 8 spots, or a 2 and a 3 to come up 8 spots, I'm doing that. But after that, 2 more players. I have Jordan Davis just a little higher than Jamison Williams, and it's just because I think that you can find lots of ways to win at receiver. I don't know when we're going to see something like Jordan Davis again at defensive tackle. So those would really be my top 5 options for the 13th pick.
Yeah, and I think you're always looking for elite traits, right, Cody? I think Davis, like we said, I think he does that. Again, it's a projection if he can do it on every down, or what weight he'll play at, and can he consistently rush inside? I think all the stuff out there that he can is just purely false. Watch the Clemson game and it just changed my opinion totally on him. I think you've got guys like Thibodeau that may or may not fall at 30, and I think, I'm definitely in the camp that if he's there at 3, you probably would take him. But I think there's been too many people that I certainly trust around the Texans that said he won't be there because they won't have him on the board, quite simply. So that's definitely one. Jermaine Johnson, I'm not quite sold on. Cody, do you think he can be a consistent, even front edge setter? I mean, in terms of all his tape, I think it all checks out. He looks slight at times, and I have slight concerns. But what do you think of John's guys, and have you got any kind of ones of your own that you think 13, if they're there, it's a no-brainer?
Yeah, I agree with everything John just mentioned. All the picks he just mentioned. I like Jermaine. I think he's a good run defender. Not the most bendy guy, pretty twitchy, but he has a good array of like pass rush moves, spin moves, stuff like that. So I do like him. The one guy I'd add, and people are gonna probably think it's a reach, but it's Devin Lloyd out of Utah. He's a guy that I've been seeing getting hardcore Darius Leonard comps, and I can see it. He's my number 1 linebacker in the class. Obviously, I'd like to trade back if we couldn't get him, but I wouldn't be mad if he was the pick at 13 either.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think as well, what you got to remember, right, is that it's going to be, these are upgrades. I think until they're not. I think in that we've got to find the value at the right spot, and if it's linebacker in this system, it's not be necessarily a top tier position, but we'll need to find it. I've seen a mixed review on the linebackers class. I've not got anybody ranked in the top tier at all, certainly, but it's a crapshoot, right? And I think the fact that Caserio came out and spoke about that this week, John, I think it perhaps shows he's a little bit uneasy about it. I think because we all know that's the case, but from to come and blatantly say it, I'm assuming there's a sentiment certainly within the league and general managers that it's a little bit more tricky just with the volume of guys, and there's very few guys that have given themselves any distinction with their tape or throughout the process.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a really weird draft. I think that's true. It's across a lot of positions that because of COVID, I'm pretty sure there are more draft eligible players than there have been in a long time. And then on top of that, there aren't a lot of super elite guys. And in the same tier, if we want to tier everybody, you can find probably 5 or 6 guys at each position that look the same. So we're really going to see what traits do teams cover. I think we're going to learn a ton about Houston and how they think they want to build just by virtue of, okay, like whoever they pick, we're probably going to be able to say there are 3 guys who look a lot like him. What does he do better?
Yeah. So, Cody, ideal kind of boxes ticked when we come at the first round on the end of Thursday. What would you say the kind of essentials for you are to walk away with those 2 picks if they do take 2 right enough?
I don't know if I have an essential or an ideal pick. I mean, I think I would go with guys like Kayvon at 3 and then Jordan Davis at 13. I know they all have their concerns in different ways, right? But you build the trenches on the defensive line. That would be good. I mean, I could see it going a bunch of different ways. I'm cool with a bunch of different ways, but that would be my ideal picks, I think, in the first.
Yeah, and John, have you got any must that you need to take out of round 1?
I gotta lead with one defensive player. The The mocks that I don't like the most are an O lineman and a wide receiver at 3 and 13. I don't mind taking an offensive lineman at 3. And hell, I don't mind either of the guards. I really like Kenyon Green and Zion Johnson if that's what they want to do at 13, although I think they can move back and do that.
Yeah.
But for me, the turnovers really mask that this is not a very good NFL defense. And I don't think people realize how much help they need. So getting another edge rusher opposite of Grenard, or getting a true corner who every NFL team would be like, that guy's legit. Even Hamilton, just to give some backbone to the secondary. I can't really point to one foundational piece right now that Lovie Smith, who's a defensive coach, and we'd all say he isn't the future, but if you're going to start to build something collectively, like, you kind of have to have faith in that head coach's process. And I can't point to one guy that's a foundational piece right now. We all hope that's Jonathan Grenard, but we're probably going to need to see it for another year. So really putting our coach in a position to succeed, in a position for people to start buying into what we're doing. So for me, I need a guy on defense.